failure doesn't mean failed implants. Sometimes it just means broken teeth, failed reputation, or burnt payroll hours. So I had the 3D printer. The patients would loosen up the screws and they'd break the prosthetic, or they'd break off the screw in the multi-unit. Every time you have to redesign it, you pay a designer fee.
If you want implant patients, you're going to just talk about implant patients. What else could that patient have in their mouth, right? Sometimes these financial conversations will take 4 or 5 visits to figure out what's wrong and what you would like to do and how we can eventually afford this.
People come in and they need all this treatment and they qualify financially, but they were like, they didn't want to do full arch. They wanted another option or whatever. You're stepping over $10 bills to pick up pennies. Welcome back to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys so you can grow the way that you want, but you can't grow if you're struggling to add full arch and you don't know up from down. And today, I'm so thankful for the experience that I got to have where I hosted Dr. Daniel and Dr. Taher, who have been doing full arch for some time now. So if you really want to learn from people who've actually done it and are actually going to be transparent with you, they're the guys that you're going to want to listen to right now. This is going to blow your mind. Some great tips in it. Stay tuned. You've probably noticed this before, but this podcast is unsponsored. What that means is we don't get paid to do it, but we want to bring you the best information possible. So how do we make sure that this content stays on the air? We need you to like and subscribe. Wherever you're at, whatever you're listening on, just give us a thumbs up or subscribe, and that helps us out so much. I know that you probably haven't done it, so I'm just going to sit here and wait until you do. 95% of our listeners have not subscribed to our podcast, so go ahead and do it now. Don't make this awkward. All right, good. Back to the show. On that note, though, about like having these conversations and these, calling and asking people for help, I would love your guys' thoughts, and we'll start with you, Daniel, and then go to you, Taher. Is like, how do you find the right mentors? And so let me kind of kick off how I see the full arch looking outside in, is that there's a lot of companies out there that are like 10, 20, 30,000 bucks. I'll teach you everything. I'm going to teach you marketing, operations, clinic. It's like, I don't know if you can teach I don't know if any single one person can teach everything or be good at everything, right? There's a lot of marketing and sales people out there that are like, come to us, we'll get everything for you. You know what I mean? If you can do the case clinically, we'll solve everything for you. Give us 10, 20. So it's kind of, there's a lot of like, pay us this lump sum of money and we'll kind of teach you everything. And you may get 80 or 90 or 100% of one thing, but then you're going to get like 20% of everything else. So how do you actually know who to, especially clinically, how do you know who to go trust and have conversations with? Or how did you guys solve that? Daniel, Dr. Daniel, why don't we start with you and then we'll punt over to here.
What I did, I felt like I just shopped around a lot. I took a lot of observation classes with several different doctors and groups. And then along the way, you start to notice who's the salesman of those people and who are actually there to help you grow and improve that journey. And you really quickly like learn that, right? You go somewhere like, oh my God, this person's just trying to sell me, but they're not in it for the right reasons. Or you might notice that this person teaching you doesn't actually do the procedure themselves. I've actually noticed that quite often. So you'll go take an implant class and some docs be talking about FP1s and then you find out they don't even do them in their office.
That's
You're like,
crazy.
oh my God. It's such a lie.
I saw an institute that taught on clinical full arch, and then they taught the business and marketing and that side of it too. And I was talking with them and I was like, where do you get how many arches do you do a month? And we do like, 2 to 4. And I said, where are those coming from? Like, how are you getting them? Oh, we get them, doctor referrals and patient referrals. And I'm like, you can't teach on the operational and marketing side then, because that's a totally different ballgame. Like, it's radically different. And so that's a lot of the, and some people are malicious and there's bad people out there, but some people just don't know. They just don't know. They just haven't gone through it themselves. So that's a great example that you just gave there. Dr. Taher, how would you solve it? If you were starting today, you're a GP office, you're a young doc, and you're just like, man, I want to add full arch. How would you go about making sure you get the right kind of mentor?
It's really important. And so, we have a lot of docs who come through and they think they can get everything done in a weekend course, and you just can't.
Yeah.
And I wish it was true, because we teach weekend courses. And I wish that I could give someone the systems to work within a practice for the rest of their careers on this thing, but you can't do it in ortho. You can't do it in maybe endo to some degree, because like that's just part of the GP armamentarium and things that we do. But you can't really do surgery off a weekend course. And so what I recommend is there are a lot of teachers out there who teach because it lights them up, and it's that they're passionate about it, and they truly give with two hands and only ask with one hand. And so the only true way to find who they are is to ask in the court of public opinion sometimes, but then also sometimes you can't find those people. So then talk to your friends, right? Social media, I don't think is the best place to find out who's who and where you can find the best, because I think sometimes social media, it just glorifies the loudest person. Yeah. And it's not bad to have a presence on social media. Like I do it, Briskie does it. We have to do it, right?
I get what you're saying though.
But there's other educators out there who are phenomenal teachers who just don't have a presence. And so I think that reaching out to people and finding out like, hey, like my local oral surgeon, I went and shadowed him like a decade ago, but he was very kind with his time, and I sent him referrals as a thank you. So there could be anyone who does this procedure who just wants to teach you and who cares about your success that you can call. Like I would honestly say, and I hope this is like, it comes across as true as I can, impart it, is Dr. Briskie and myself, we do these phone calls every single day. And so we talk to the docs, and even if you never end up coming to Colorado Surgical and you never come to one of our courses, you guys can reach out to us. You can text us your cases, and we'll just put our thumb on the scale and say, hey, well, consider these 3 things on this case when you start. And what I love to find out is like, that has a benefit. And then they can send me pictures back of the after and say, hey, those things you talked about, that did happen. And then this is how I solved them. So it's fun to do. And so I know there's so many people out there who are like me and Dr. Briskie, where we're just here to help. And I would say, find us and reach out to us. And then if you reach out to us and I'm not your cup of tea, I got 10 other people to send you to. Because here's the thing, is like we all know teachers in our lives who have dramatically changed the trajectory of our lives because of their presence from an educational perspective. And so like maybe Dr. Briskie and myself aren't that for you, but there's someone we know who is, and vice versa. You just got to find whoever you gel with well, and that energy is exchanged properly. And once you find that, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, and one of the things that was baked into your guys' answers that you didn't say explicitly, but it was baked in there, is that if it's too good to be true, if someone's like, yeah, we're going to teach you everything, and this is the last piece that you need to get to 10 arches, there's probably something off about that, right? Like you want people, for me, and this is from a non-clinical perspective of just learning and talking with dentists, is like, I want to talk to the people who are honest about how hard it is and how difficult it is, because I went from just doing just driving leads for dentists to working with GP offices to driving hygiene schedules, emergencies, single implants, aligners, full arch, the whole cosmetic, the whole thing. And every time it got harder and harder and harder, right? It got more and more complicated. And it's just really, really important to me when I'm working with people, like if they're just like, oh yeah, no, it's not a big deal, just come to this thing. It's like, it's never that simple. And if I still feel there's a lot of dentists that feel that it is that way. So what were some other things for you guys? We'll start with you, Dr. Taher. What are some other things that you learned along the way that you were just like, you know what? I wish I would have done this differently at the beginning.
One thing that really I wish I could have back was I had a point where I couldn't get enough patients to say yes, because they were saying yes, but the ones who said yes couldn't afford it. And then the ones who maybe said yes, I wasn't skilled enough to do the case because of those pterygoids and zygomas or palatal approach or something. And so what I started doing was the patients who had enough bone for me to do at that time in my career, I wanted to make the price lower, but I didn't want to eat the lab bill. So then I did the price as a lower price, but I did implants on resin temporaries. And man, oh man, was that an epic failure. Now, guess what? I closed a crap ton of cases, okay? And I did a lot of surgery. And then what did I do? I burned so much money fixing the cases later because the patients come in and the teeth are broken.
How bad, like what you just said clinically, honestly, I don't understand it. I don't need to understand it. I know the dentists get it, right? But like, how big of a gap on failure is that? Is that just like, for sure you're going to fail and you have to fix them? And then what was the cost associated with that?
Yeah. Thanks for asking for that. So failure doesn't mean failed implants. Sometimes it just means broken teeth or failed reputation or burnt payroll hours. So I had the 3D printer. So the patients would loosen up the screws and they'd break the prosthetic, or they'd break off the screw in the multi-unit. So every multi-unit is $120 to $160. Every time you have to redesign it, you pay a designer fee. Every time you have to reprint, there's a reprint fee, and the person selling you the printer will be like, oh, it's only $6 for a print. Well, guess what? You have payroll hours assigned to printing the arch. And then you have the phone call that comes into the front office who has to deal with the angry phone call. Then you got to schedule them in chair time. If you're at capacity in your office, well, there's something called opportunity cost loss.
Yeah.
Well, that chair could be producing revenue. Now it's switching out a broken prosthetic on an upset patient who's telling 10 other people that your teeth break. So with the resin temporaries, at the end of the day, I had a lot of patients who came in and their teeth were breaking. The implants tended to be fine, but maybe a couple implant failures as well that I had to fix. And so what I did is I just ate the cost, because then I owned the mills and all that stuff. I just converted everyone to zirconia so I could stop dealing with that problem. So the pros of doing it that way is I got a lot of repetition. And the pros of it is I learned a lot about prosthetics and fixing prosthetics, because I fixed a lot of them. And then the cons are obvious, right? I just covered it all, but it was such a mistake. So I wouldn't do it. The only time I'd maybe talk about doing a hybrid option like that is if you have like a titanium bar with a PMMA overlay or a resin overlay or some kind of something set in place where there's no flexure in the prosthetic. So you have something rigid anchoring all your multi-units together. So I know technology will provide a way to solve that problem, and then the cost to the patients will come down because there'll be this middle of the ground option. I just don't think it exists for the general mass population just yet.
What about you, Dr. Daniel?
I think it would be in the treatment planning aspect. Because if you want implant patients, you're going to just talk about implant patients. But what else could that patient have, like in their mouth, right? Could they be a denture, an overdenture, or all these other things that there are at hand that come with surgery? Or is there a vestibuloplasty you can do instead to lengthen the ridge to do a denture? Like, how many other things you could have sold that patient on, but you made them believe that there's just one option, and you just basically kick them out the door. So I have so many one-liners now that I say during that consultation that prevents that from happening now, right? Because if you see patients getting stressed or like, man, I don't know what to do, I just tell them like, listen, sometimes these financial conversations will take 4 or 5 visits to figure out what's wrong and what you would like to do and how we can eventually afford this, right? And just make them feel okay with not knowing an answer.
Yeah.
But I think I passed up so many cases because one, I wasn't clinically ready to do them, or I didn't sell them confidently, or if I would have just helped the patient get what they needed and not what I wanted to do to them.
Yeah. Taher, I want to go to you here in 1 second, but I want to frame this one more time what Dr. Dana just said, because it's very powerful. I've worked with full arch centers. We've done marketing for full arch centers where they said, people come in and they need all this treatment and they qualify financially, but they were like, they didn't want to do full arch. They wanted another option or whatever. And the doctors are like, no, I don't want to do it. We don't want to do it here. And it's just like, to me, and I think the full arch centers are starting to change their tune on that a little bit because they want to keep growing, right? And I'm not going to say anybody's name, but the biggest guys that you can think of are starting to change their position from we only do full arch to they do other options. And then I've also worked with smaller doctors who it's more of a ego thing, I think. And I'm guessing at that, where they're just like, I just want full arch. And it's like, hey doc, you had these patients that came in that did all these other treatments that generated a lot of revenue. And yeah, but it wasn't full arch. So that doesn't count. Right. And it's just like, well, you helped a lot of people though. Right. And so it's like, you're stepping over $10 bills to pick up, pennies. What is your thought on that, Dr. Taher, of like how people we get in these mindsets of like, full arch and full arch only, or just particular lanes, and we get stuck there?
Yeah. I mean, I'll speak from experience. Like I've been stuck there too. I've done what Dr. Briskie was talking about, where I only presented full arch because that's what I wanted to do. And I probably overlooked a lot of cases, and I didn't help out a lot of people who came through the door. And then also when I was younger, and still to some degree, this still like bothers me, every once in a while, but I'll be like, oh man, I had a crappy arch month. And I'll be like, okay, well, this other person did 10 arches, and this other person said they did 40, and this other person, like there's always someone out there who's doing more arches. And then there's a version of like, jealousy, envy, what have you, right? Like, hey, I'm doing all this right. Why am I not doing enough arches? Like, I think this resides a lot within dentists, and maybe everyone, right? Maybe plumbers are uber competitive about their thing, right? But for full arch, it's something that's specifically really jarring to dentists when they compare, like, I do this many arches. It's almost like you lead with it, right? Like, hey, here's my first and last name, and here's how many arches I do.
And here's how many arches I do a month. Yeah. Or here's how many arches I did last year or whatever. Yeah.
100%. And it's not good for the environment. It's not good for like people's mentalities to like think of it in that way. Yeah. But nonetheless, it happens, and it happens to me too. So if it's happening to you, just know that like I've been in the game for a really long time, and it still happens to me. I just tried to let it pass, just like a breeze in the wind, just like let it go. Yeah. And just know you can focus on your business. And like at the end of the day, success is a barometer for so many different things, right?
Yes.
Impact into the community, impact for your team. If we're looking at P&Ls and revenue and profit, like, great, let's look at that too. And by doing these extra cases and doing dentures and doing partials and overdentures, and especially the way Briskie does them, he has a whole technique on how to do overdentures and dentures and all this stuff that are like rock solid. You can still have a really successful practice. And guess what? All those denture patients are getting bone grafted and set up for the arch when they're ready. And this is a Paul Homily thing. He doesn't care when you do the case. He cares that when you choose to do the case, that you're doing it with me. And so if you set up your cases with enough denture cases in your practice, I'm closing cases I treat and plan 3 years ago.
Wow.
They're just coming to me because they know I'm the right person. They're just not ready yet. And I'm ready for them whenever they're ready for me.
I love that. I love that mindset too. One of the rules that I've learned in life is the grass is always greener on the other side, but sometimes they have a septic tank over there, right? Like you just don't know. And it's like you'll see a car that you really want and you can't afford or whatever, right? And it's like, you don't know what that person's going through. You don't know if that person is about to go bankrupt. You don't know if their wife just left them. You don't know if their kids is an absolute dumpster fire, you know what I mean? And a constant headache to them. Like you really don't. Then maybe they have the car, but what about all the other stuff? And so I love looking at other business. I like Elon Musk. I love watching him and going, how in the world does this guy do it? You know what I mean? I can barely run a dental marketing company. This guy's running rocket ships and cars. But again, that's one thing to say, okay, he does so many arches. That's inspiring. But success for you can be measured by so many different things. And are you happy? Like that's something I think a lot of times with dentists in the dental industry, there's a lot, and it's true. We see it in the statistics, a lot of unhappy dentists that are very, very successful. And so it's like, if you're happy and you're making a good living and you're doing what you love to do, like you're winning, bro. Like be happy. You know what I mean? So I love that point of view. Daniel, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm really happy you said that because I felt like that happened to me for sure. Because like you got to figure out what is going to make you happy because you don't know what type of dentist you want to be at when you first graduate. You don't know what type of clinical you want to do. You can just make assumptions off of like what's cool, right? Or what people are talking about. So I feel like you have to go on this really powerful journey your first 5 years and figure out who you are and what you want to do. And the things you need to think about are, do I want to be an associate and I'm okay with that? And if the answer is yes, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with clocking out and going, right? Yeah. Then you have to ask yourself too, like, do I want to own my practice? And if you do, why do you want to do that, right? Is it a legacy thing you're missing? Then cool, then go after it, right? Or do you want a partnership too? And are you ready to have more than one wife in your life, right? And no matter what the answer is, it's okay. But I think it's really important to be honest with yourself. If you're okay with having one practice, don't listen to that guy who says have 3 of them.
Yeah.
Right? Or how many opportunities do you want? Do you want to have 5 or 6? Or do you want to have 3 or 4? Or do you want to have 6 or 7? Or do you want to have 12 to 15? There's no wrong answer, but you have to be okay with your decision after you made it. Right? So be honest with you. You really have to be honest with yourself in dentistry because you can definitely regret some decisions you've made. But the most important part is just build a legacy and be very honest with yourself throughout the process.
Dr. Taher, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Daniel said about like, knowing thyself and approaching things in that way. Actually, sorry, Gary, can you tell me what we were talking about before?
Yeah, so we were talking about, no, it's all good. So I'll say this. So what we were talking about is just like measuring success, and what Dr. Daniel said is like, how do you actually, knowing what you want. And one of the things that I think is hard about business is that we think that the business is the thing that we want, right? So for me, it's always like, man, if I could just get this big and if I could just do this much. But then I realized right away, it's like, well, yeah, I got it. I did it. But I don't want to do sales every day, or I don't want to do this every day, or whatever it may be inside of your business. And so then you're like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this next thing. And really success for me, and I love your guys' thoughts on your point of view. It's like having the freedom to choose what I want to do is really success for me. And I happen to love what I do, and I happen to love working. Like sometimes I talk with people and they're like, dude, why are you always so excited? And it's like, I literally love doing dental marketing. I know I'm weird. It's what I love to do. I love working with people. I love helping people grow. And I love growing my business. And I love being able to have the flexibility to choose what I do inside of my business. I don't even have to wear particular hats. I get to choose every day. So for me, that's success. But you don't really know that when you get started. And I think with Full Arch, it's such a trap because it's like, oh, I'm just going to, it takes me a day or 2 days or 3 days to generate $25,000 in treatment. I'm just going to have this one patient. I'm just going to generate it and it's going to solve my problems. It's actually not going to solve any of your problems. It's just actually making it more complex. You're actually just making things harder, and you got to have the willpower to work through that. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Taher? Like, what's your point of view on it?
Yeah, I think that, our natural propensity as dentists is we worked really hard for something that's stable, that, there's a finite amount of dentists graduating every year. Granted, yes, it's increasing, but there's patients. And when you're in an industry where a license is required to treat, that it allows us to have a lot of stability in what we do. And then you're like, okay, well, now I'm a dentist, and I'm a dentist who maybe has a higher risk profile, or I'm doing arches for whatever particular reason, right? Maybe it's for impact, maybe it's for revenue, maybe it's for complexity and like the creativity of what surgery gives you. There's multiple things that, complex procedures can provide. So now you take the extra risk in and you spend 30 to 50 to 100 to 200. I'm probably $250,000 into my training at this point over the past, many, many years, right?
Almost as expensive as almost half of dental school. It's not bad.
Pretty much, right? And so that's why it's not a weekend course type of thing. But then as I evolve into like my business ownership, my life as a husband, my life as a father, like my goals every year change. My vision of what my career is going to be every year changes. And so my vision for how I have impact into my practice and look at success changes. Like, just like a bulimic looks at the scale, right, all the time, I would sit and stare at my P&L and my balance sheet, and it drove me nuts. And it would I was doing awesome. And like my overhead was like 42% and I was crushing it. And everyone was like, how in the world is your practice so healthy and thriving? But it's an unhealthy way if you're just so skewed into one thing. And so then the years tack on and I start to get a little bit more, wise to the game of what like longevity and things look like. And now it's like, I view it a little differently. So again, but Full Arch is you have this huge investment, you have all this equipment. So then it's hard to like back off of it and say, okay, I'm no longer going to do it because you're so deep into the investment. And so that's why there's a lot of like wearing your stripes of how many arches you have on your shoulder, because it's, it's just a way to represent like success within something that seldom people do or few people do. So nonetheless, I think that will change. More people are doing Full Arch. More people are going to start doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
More people are going to maybe not do so good of work. And then people like us exist to come in and help and fix things along the way. And then there will be a whole nother wave of dentists who are out there with so many patients in full arches that some version of some massive repair project is going to take place. And granted, I'll have more white hair and maybe I'll all be white hair at that point. But yeah, we're going to be fixing a lot of arches in the future too, because not everything I'm going to do is going to last forever. I would say nothing I'm going to do is going to last forever unless that patient, is in their 80s and they'll go the distance. So we have to be prepared for that realization too. On
that note, if someone wants to get a hold of you guys and kind of learn from you, or even just pick your brain and say, hey, I just need some direction here. If this is something I should do, what's the best way to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, reach out to us at coloradosurgicalinstitute.com. There's going to be a number there you can call. And you can always reach out to Dr. Briskie and myself, and we're here to help. We truly are on anything. We're GPs teaching GPs. So from that perspective, we're walking in your shoes, and we're here to help you along the way.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. Thank you, Dr. Daniel, Dr. Taher. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.